Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you decide to have your time of worship. I hope that the last couple of days you've been able to take advantage of the mornings between 6 and 9 to be able to get outside of the house and run or walk your dog or whatever that might look like for you. And just to be able to see others and to enjoy at least a little bit of extra freedom that we have at the moment with the level 4 of the lockdown. Last week I introduced our reflection of practicing the presence of God, and I used Dallas Willard's quote when he once called hurry the great enemy of spiritual life in our day, and said that followers of Jesus must ruthlessly eliminate hurry. I first heard this idea from our current moderator of the UPCSA General Assembly, the Right Reverend Dr. Peter Langeman, when he asked by one of his elders about what he can tell people when asked what he does as a minister. He answered, "Tell them that I try to stay attentive to God and eliminate busyness and hurry from my life." Now, of course, this didn't say much about the daily activities he was involved in, but it revealed something about his priorities. He wanted to be aware and available to minister as and when a need arose and where the Spirit was leading him. Something which I've been personally journeying with over several months is the value and the need to spend time being silent and listening to the Spirit. I came to Johannesburg in 2018, March thereof, after having spent a year in 2017 at a Kroonstad congregation. Kroonstad is a small town, and I was sent there for my probation to minister in a congregation of about 15 people. And so, doing so, I had a fair amount of time to reflect, to be silent, and simply enjoy being present. And if anyone asked during that time how I was doing, my answer would likely have been, well, I'm pretty relaxed, or chilled is what I would normally say. And Karen still tells people about our mid-afternoon teas, which we would often enjoy in the middle of the week. A couple who've been married for only maybe 2 years at that stage, in their sort of mid to late 20s, having an afternoon tea seems like what a retired couple might do. Well, there is a stark contrast between my life in Johannesburg and life in Kroonstad. Johannesburg is a busy hub of South Africa where there is much to do and not enough hours in the day to get everything done. In general, people live at a very fast pace. Most of my conversations with people revolve around being busy, about struggling to find time to get together and with friends and family, let alone to be still and silent for a period of time just listening. And in fact, a lot of conversations end up revolving around how to get to work and how long it takes on the busy roads of Joburg and how much time it takes to do so. If I had to ask, if you had to ask any of my friends or family who ask me how are things going, I'm pretty sure that they would say that my standard response would be, sure, well, things are pretty busy and hectic at the moment. I can't recall a person in Joburg giving me the response, well, I'm pretty relaxed, unless maybe they've just come back from a 2-week or 3-week holiday at the beach. Sometimes I wonder if this is self-inflicted because of the general attitude around being busy. Being busy indicates in our society being productive and having meaning. Not being busy thereby may have the connotation of laziness or unproductivity. So even when we aren't busy with work, we try to cram as much into our lives so that at least we feel or appear to be busy, and so therefore, by our definition, productive and meaningful. This might come in the form of adopting many hobbies, volunteering with as many NPOs or even church activities as we can, constant exercising, always preparing activities for our children, or organising coffee dates or braais at every opportunity. Now, these things are not bad of themselves. In fact, being busy is not bad in and of itself. Jesus was busy in that there was a lot to do. There was a lot of pressure on his time from other people who desired to get his attention for various reasons. But he was not rushing from place to place person to person, activity to activity, trying to fit in as much as he could into the day. When busy becomes hurrying from one task to the next, one activity to the next, one appointment to the next, without reflecting much about what we are doing, how we are feeling, and why or who we are and who is with us, then we miss the opportunities, we miss the beauty, we miss the presence of the people we are interacting with, and we miss the presence of God. Cardiologists Meyer Friedman and Ray Roseman coined the term hurry sickness after observing many patients suffering from what they called a hurrying sense of time urgency. They called hurry sickness a continuous struggle and unremitting attempt to accomplish or achieve more and more things, or to participate in more and more events in less and less time. Psychology today defines it as a malaise in which a person feels chronically short of time and so tends to perform every task faster and to get flustered when encountering any kind of delay. So how do we know if we are living hurried lives? Well, Psychology Today, who also gave that same definition I just read, gives 5 possible ways to test. One is that you move from one checkout line to another because it is shorter. Secondly, counting the cars in front of you and either getting in the lane that has the least cars or is going the fastest. Thirdly, you multitask to the point that you forget one of the tasks. Fourth one was accidentally putting your clothes on inside out or backwards. The fifth one was sleeping in your daytime clothes to save time in the morning. Now, I don't know if one of those sort of reverberated with you, but one of them certainly did with me. And I can most certainly say that I've definitely tried to change lines in the checkout counter, or even with driving, try to get into the lane which has faster cars so that I can get to where I need to get to quicker. And often it certainly makes me feel like I'm in a rush and then I'm hurried. The Sabbath is one way of combating hurry. The commandment to keep the Sabbath comes from the imitation of God's rest after the creation. It was also a day which would be devoted to remembering the Lord your God, who brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt, where they were slaves. The purpose of the Sabbath was to bring rest, well-being, through fellowship with the Lord their God. In an interview with Eugene Peterson about the topic, "Why Can't I Hear God?" the interviewer asked, "Why do so few people who believe in God bother to know God?" Peterson answered, "The most obvious answer is that we're in a hurry and not used to listening. We're trained to use our minds to get information and complete assignments. But the God revealed to us in Jesus and our scriptures is infinitely personal and relational. Unless we take the time to be quiet in a listening way, in the presence of God, we never get to know Him." The same question, he says, is why so few married couples really know their spouses. And people get divorced after 20 years of marriage, and the rejected spouse may say, "I never knew this was coming. I thought everything was fine." But there was not much listening in those 20 years, Eugene Peterson says. Unfortunately, the Sabbath became a ritualistic burden to the Israelites, with up to 39 prohibitions. Their notion about the Sabbath was to obey the laws put in place to ensure compliance to the commandment. The strictness of the law and the punishment for contravening them most likely led to the conception of a God who was cold, distant, and pleased only when they complied with the law. The Pharisees, the ones who challenged Jesus, were sticklers for the law. Their rightness before God was largely placed in their fervent obedience to every law. The trouble I find about creating these laws is that they serve mostly to puff oneself up. If we adhere to certain rules, then we can feel upright and righteous if we obey them and live by them and keep them. And I wonder if we do that in our hurriedness during the week. Perhaps we have set up certain rules which are good practices, such as having a Sabbath, praying in the evening, reading the Bible in the morning, but which become opportunities only to tick a box and say, done. In our hurriedness, these become tasks to complete rather than opportunities to know God. The Sabbath was meant to be a means to slow down from the busyness of the week, to quieten the mind from the distraction of busyness, and to listen, become aware of God's presence, experiencing the fellowship of God as delightful, restful, and healing. In the society we live in, it may not always be possible to set aside a whole day for a Sabbath. But the idea is not to become judicial about a Sabbath, but relational. When could we set aside time during our week to have a Sabbath time? Getting to know God by slowing down and spending time with God. Not to tick a box, but to delight in the presence of God. As we go through the week ahead, perhaps we can look more intently at things that we reflected on last week, which perhaps indicated that we are hurrying, and things or ways in which that we could possibly eliminate hurry. I wonder what it would look like if in our reading, in our praying, in our spending a bit of time in the morning or in the evening during the day, that we can simply be present, to breathe in, to breathe out. And as we breathe in, to say, Holy Spirit, fill me. And as we breathe out, to allow those worries, that hurriedness to exit our bodies, exit our minds, and to say, God, would you help me to be aware of your presence here and now? And by doing so during the week, we can reflect on our hurriedness and where we are in a hurry. Perhaps it's in our, when we are wake up in the morning and we hurry to start work, or when we start getting back to driving to work, that we become aware of how fast we drive, when we stop at a stop street, whether we indeed stop or whether we hurried and we kind of do a rolling stop. All these things may indicate how we are in a hurry to get to the next thing. And I pray that as we continue to reflect on our hurriedness and practicing the presence of God, that this will be one way where we become more aware of how we can slow down and acknowledge and be aware of God with us. Friends, would you be blessed as you go forward into the week and continue to worship the Lord our God in the places that you find yourself. Amen.